everybody. Today I'm joined by Melody. She is a 2024 alumni of Purdue University. She graduated with a major in physics and minors in creative writing and astronomy. During her undergraduate experience, she did astronomy research with Purdue professor Dan Milisavljevic. Am I saying that last name correctly?
You're so close. It's Millie Savlovich.
Okay. I tried sounding it out, but she also
It's
did
okay.
a she also did an REU at Notre Dame on data analysis of experimental nova nucleosynthesis reaction. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
For that research, she presented at the 2023 fall meeting of APS Division of Nuclear Physics and Japanese Physical Society. And she also presented at Purdue University's fall 2023 undergraduate research symposium. Outside of her research, she was on the executive board for GMiP and she was the treasurer of SPS. Now she's pursuing a master's at Brown University, continuing her physics journey. Thank you so much for joining me today, Melody. On behalf of GMiP, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience with us, and thank you as well for the contributions you made to the department during your time at Purdue.
Yeah, of course. You make me sound so cool. Oh my word.
You are so cool.
I mean, I don't know. I try.
All right, so my first question for you is that I remember a symposium session that you presented in it was either, I think it was spring of 2024. And if I recall correctly, you were doing research in nuclear physics and you were filling in this chart for some specific particle
hmm
types, and it made up this really large database. How did you get into this research? Was it something you always wanted to do?
So that was basically like me just presenting my RE presentation. And so when I applied and then luckily got accepted to Notre Dame's REU, they have a very like robust nuclear physics like sub department in the physics department. Um, because they have a lot of money. Good job, guys. And so when I was trying to decide what project I wanted to do, like the head of the REU, like emailed all of us and was like, "Hey, like list your top 5 people, and then depending on when you send that to me, you'll kind of just have like your pick of the litter and whoever's busy." So I had been doing research with Dan for pretty much my whole Purdue career. Um, and there was a project at Notre Dame. Excuse me, my throat. Oh, we're gonna get through this. Sorry, I'm sick. We're good.
Okay, take your
But
time.
there was a project at Notre Dame that was very similar to the work I had done with Dan, and so it seemed just like a good way for me to just keep building up my skills. When I talked to Dan and like other professors in the department and my friends, a lot of them advised me and were like, the REU is designed for you to do something completely new, right? For you to be able to try something out that's totally not in your wheelhouse if you want to kind of expose you to like what physics research can really look like. And so with that in mind, I just kind of took the leap and was like, well, what if I just did nuclear physics, right? Like, why would I go to a university with this incredible nuclear facility and then not take advantage of it? Which was just kind of where my thought process was. And then what's cool about at least Notre Dame's department is that they have their nuclear physics is primarily nuclear astrophysics. And so I kind of like chose, okay, well, Dan does supernova research. And then this professor at Notre Dame, whose name's also Dan, does nova research, which is just kind of like smaller scale supernova. And I just kind of mashed the two. And I was like, this sounds cool. I'll try this out. And I actually really loved it. I was doing Excel sheets the whole summer, so I was really good at making it sound like it was a lot more interesting than it kind of was, low key. It was just me doing Excel sheets. That's it, pretty much. Um, but it really did open up my eyes to because I had just been in just like computational astrophysics for what I guess like 2 years at that point. Um, and it really opened up my eyes to seeing what other physics exists, right? Than maybe like the opportunities that Purdue has and so on and so forth. And so I don't know if I would say it's something I always wanted to do, but it was definitely something I really wanted to pursue, especially in postgraduate education. Um, I will not get to do that to do that here at Brown, which is totally fine. But it definitely was a really cool way for me to be like, wow, I had no idea that like this was an option and this is really, really fun. And I loved doing it. The conference was awesome. Yeah, it's worth expanding your horizons, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And thank you for also being very honest that like your undergraduate research was doing like Excel spreadsheets. I feel like that's something that we mask a lot with like even in the research that I do with Professor Durbin, a lot of it is Excel spreadsheets, like getting data from
Yeah,
a machine or for something, and then it's just a lot of data
yeah.
manipulation.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, exactly. Like that's so much of physics, right? And like with Dan, I did almost exclusively Python coding, and then the summer after was just Excel sheets, right? And so it's like you kind of sign up for it in physics without really realizing it. That like, oh, I'm just here to be a data scientist with a different label.
yeah.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned you're now at Brown and you're not doing nuclear physics research at Brown. So
Right.
how have you been settling in? How does the atmosphere differ from Purdue?
Yeah, so I moved in on Tuesday. So I have been here
Oh,
for
that was
2 days.
like,
Um, so I can't really like say a lot because I actually don't start classes until September 4th,
oh,
which is
wow.
really nice, actually. I love not doing work until September. That's pretty great. And I have orientation next week, so I haven't really actually met anybody, but I have like spoken to people in the department. I've met grad students virtually. I've at least interacted with the physics department, and they all do seem super welcoming. Which is I'm really glad that that experience is carried over from Purdue. Purdue was, at least in my experience, an incredible environment. A really like warm, welcoming, fun atmosphere. Excuse me, my goodness. And I am hopeful that Brown will be just as fun. I imagine it'll still be like, let me rephrase. I imagine it'll be a little bit more, um, how do I, like, constricted maybe? Like, it's an Ivy League institution, and so they're gonna be a little more maybe rigid. That's a good word for it. Whereas Purdue is obviously, we take ourselves seriously, but Purdue also knows how to have fun. I feel like there's that huge distinction in the Purdue physics department. And so I don't know. But I'm hopeful that it'll be exciting. I'm hopeful that it'll be fun. Yeah, I can't do nuclear physics here because they don't have nuclear physics research here. The Ivy League that capitalized on that was Yale, and I didn't want to go to Yale. So, but yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm excited to see what my options are.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way, on getting into Brown. That's super huge.
Thanks.
What do you plan on doing with your master's degree from Brown once you're done? Are you looking towards a PhD or towards industry?
Yeah, so that's a great question that Melody in 2 years will definitely be able to answer for you. Melody right now has no idea. And I think actually, so like, um, I feel like I might be jumping ahead in one of the questions, but that's okay. I'm really grateful actually to be in a master's program. Brown is one of the few places in the US that has a terminal master's program. Most US institutions don't. It's just your bachelor's and your PhD, and then your master's is like built into it. Um, but I had great research experiences. I have nothing but positive, incredible things to say about Dan. He's the best. Um, Literally one of the most incredible advisors ever. But what I learned about myself as an undergrad is that I think that I haven't really built up the research muscle in my brain. Um, that's like forming a research question and then inventing your own pathways into answering that question. I'm not very good at that, which is okay. Like I'm not trying to be mean to myself. I'm just saying, like I just haven't built that up enough yet. And so what I'm really using this master's degree for, is because you can't do much out the gate with a bachelor's in physics. At least it's tough if you want to be able to do physics. So it opens up more opportunities for me in industry, right? If that is the direction that I want to go in. But if I go through this and it's a thesis program, and so I'll get to do research and I'll have a paper at the end. If I decide that I've built up the research muscle and I'm like, I actually really do like this and I do enjoy it, then pursuing my PhD is absolutely something that I would look into doing. I feel like this was really good for me as an intermediate step, because when I graduated from my bachelor's, I really didn't know, like, man, is research really the direction that I want to go in? Is it not the direction that I want to go in? I don't want to write it off just yet, but I also don't feel that confident in it. And so this is a really great and also expensive way to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you're making the right decision for yourself. I think it's so important that, students are aware that not everyone has it figured out when they first come in.
Mm-mm, not me.
That actually reminds me, I was speaking with a whole bunch of incoming freshmen, and they were telling me like they want to do this and this research with this and this professor, being super precise about it. And I was like, you keep your options open. Even I don't really know what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm just going to move on to the next question now. So it's no secret that Purdue has a low number of gender minorities in the physics
Mhm.
department and also an extremely low population of Black students. Did you experience any bias from instructors and or other students, and how did you navigate that?
So I'm very grateful that I didn't. That Purdue Phys Astro has been one of the most, honestly, a little surprisingly, like welcoming, incredible, inclusive environments I think I've ever been in my life. Um, I I was so grateful for it. That I never felt different as a race minority or as a gender minority, and so I think that that is a huge like props to Purdue for at least Purdue Fizz. I mean, that's just a little asterisk. At least props to Purdue Fizz for really being so phenomenal to their my like to their minorities wherever they are. I'm really really honored and grateful for that. Um, at the same time, I guess as an anecdote, I think that's really interesting is the fact that I was super involved in diversity initiatives. That's something that's actually very important to me, very near and dear to my heart. Um, all of the jokes that we made aside while I was there. And I think it's interesting how, as a minority student, as a person of color specifically, how in science, how all of us are like prepared, like it's drilled in us from the day we set foot on campus that like you could have really terrible racist experiences and you could have all of these really awful things happen to you and there are here are all your resources to reach out to if you need help or if somebody's being awful to you and all of that was always sitting in the back of my mind like when if I ever have to reach out to someone about a problem. And it is interesting because I can almost guarantee you that white students are not drilled into their heads the first one that they set up step on campus like don't be racist don't be sexist, be nice, be kind, you know what I mean? And so I think that disparity will unfortunately always be there, probably, at least from now to the foreseeable future, because of the world that we live in. And I think that, which is like, that's just a symptom of a greater problem, right? And it's not anything that I hold Purdue Phys Astro to a fault to by any means, right? Um, but it is a regular occurrence in every department ever that there's no preventative measure for any of these issues. It is always okay, it happened, and how do we move forward? So that is just the lack I think I see across every department and every university is that there's no preventative like how do we try and prevent our students from doing harmful racially or what would that word be? Um, I don't like sexist crimes. I don't really know what that word is. I'm not talking anyway. But yeah, like racially motivated infractions or sexist motivated infractions and things like that. There's no preventative measure for any of those things, which is the only, I guess, flaw I see in that way. But that's uh that's a long ways from now. I don't see that changing in the next 5 to 10 years, but that's okay.
Do you think that there's a way that we can better support students like yourself, or possibly something that, we could be doing as gender minorities in physics to help raise awareness to that particular thing?
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing is just listening, which is again like a huge thing that I saw out of the Purdue physics department, which I'm so grateful for, is the fact that if there ever is a need, like people are really willing to listen to you. And like that's what's I think the most important. Is just listening to your peers, listening to what people have to say, and then taking them seriously and then going forward. Um, I'm a huge fan of multicultural science programs. Shout out my queen, Natasha Harris. I love you. Um, and I know that the diversity initiatives in the College of Science are doing their best to also just educate people, but those things are not required. And so go check out MSP. Go to one of the 5 incredible cultural centers that exist at Purdue. Um, go go be intentional about learning about somebody else's different lived experience. I think that it's just a lot of fun, first of all, but B, it can really help grow all of our awareness of how everybody is different. And but yeah, just like listening, if it's something that you really care about, you can, there are papers and articles written on all of these types of things that we can, go find and go read. Go hang out with people that don't look like you if you can find them. I know it's kind of tough at Purdue, so there's that. But yeah, which is already things that I feel like Purdue Physics is already doing. You guys are really great. It's a really great department. I'm grateful. But yeah, listen to your peers. It's worth it.
That was a great answer, by the way. Really covered all the bases there.
Glad.
I think it's really important to just remind people to listen. Like, one thing that I've heard, especially recently, is that like when someone comes to you with a problem, something you can say is, "Do you want me to listen? Do you want advice, or do you want a solution?" And so I
Yes.
think that promoting that, especially from within like our department, could be something that's like extremely beneficial. So thank you for bringing
Gosh,
light to that.
yeah. No, that's huge. Like that's a practice that I have in my everyday life. Like I'll ask my friends, like, do you want empathy or sympathy from me right now? Like, do you just want me to tell you that that sucked, or do you want me to like relate to you or like give you solutions? Like 100%. That's so good. I love that.
Shifting gears a little bit, we had a conversation while we were at the Conference for Undergraduate Women in Physics, which is now called the Conference for Undergraduate Gender Minorities in Physics,
Whoop, whoop.
that in the future you would like to teach at a university that's more focused on education as opposed to research. Did you have any experiences during your undergrad that led you to this opinion?
So this goes back to why I'm really grateful that I'm doing my master's, and why I'm glad that I didn't get into any PhD programs, um, because it's largely just a case of I don't know what I want to do with my life. Boom, just that sentence. And it actually, shout out to Dave Cedarberg, outreach coordinator at Purdue University, who planted that seed in my head to begin with. I had no idea that because we were setting up. Sorry, small story. We were setting up posters for the quantum open house for that fall. I think that was in the fall. And he just asked me because he's Dave. He was like, "So, what are you gonna do after you graduate? What's your 10-year plan? Let's talk it out right now." I was like, "Wow, I don't know." And I said, "Well, grad school for sure, and then I'll probably go the academic professor route because that's what everybody does." And I said, but I also know that that's kind of hard because like 10-year track faculty positions are super tough to get. And Dave goes, no, they're not. Sure, if you go to an R1 institution, yeah, but like you could go to a small liberal arts school and get the same experiences of being a professor. And no, it won't be so research focused, but like you'd still have like that same avenue in a way. And there are lots of liberal arts schools that need like STEM education. And I was like, I didn't know that was an option. I actually never put that together in my brain ever. So that was a little seed. And then at my REU, my research advisor there, we had a great conversation about how um, industry is awesome, but we both really love the university environment, and we really love these like just interacting with people, and that's like such a huge important part of me is how much I love being around people. talking about physics or otherwise. So that was boop, that was a little seed. And then actually this past like recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to one of my friends from home who has never done physics a day in her life. We were just talking about our different career paths. And she goes, Maddie, I really just see you as being an activist. And I was like, that's crazy. But like slay, I guess. And um, but like it really made me think. I was like, well, like you're onto something there in the sense that again, I love people, I love interacting with people. The most fun I had this past year was helping out with all of Natasha's diversity initiatives, right? And then I was like, what if I just became a Dave at a university, became an outreach coordinator? So like that's a little seed, right? And so I think it was really born out of this place of like, um, sorry, my camera's tracking my face.
No,
I don't
you're
know how
good.
to turn it off. Um, sorry, that would cut myself off. But basically, um, I didn't have any bad experiences per se that led me into wanting to not necessarily focus on research full time, but I just had a lot of other positive external influences that are of people who are not researchers full time, or even people who are, and are like, here are these other avenues that are also just as cool. And I feel like that is where I might really shine because I'd still get to interact with people. I'd still get to be potentially, hopefully, like the university space. Um, and if I decide at the end of these 2 years that I do not just have the research muscle, then I think it's a really good medium for me to be in. Where like, okay, I still get to do physics because I do still love physics, but just maybe not in the way that I initially thought that I would.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely that's a fantastic answer. Especially you mentioned like you didn't necessarily have a bad experience that led you to this field, but like you had multiple good experiences.
Yeah,
Um, really recognizing what's important to you is something that's so big, especially when you're, preparing for something that you really don't have that much knowledge on when you're younger. Recognizing those key elements of who you are is so important. So, good on you.
took 4 years, but we got there.
All right, so this is focusing on you as an individual and your passions a little bit more. I remember that you were a creative writing minor and that you were very involved with the program. As an undergraduate, how did you balance fostering your creative outlet while still maintaining a very rigorous and demanding major?
Yeah, I love this question. So I'm gonna open with saying something that I've believed for my whole life, and you're not asking for advice, but I'm gonna give you some advice anyway. Um, have a creative outlet, genuinely. Like if we spent all of our lives only doing analytical science and STEM, I genuinely believe I think we would all die. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm being so serious. Even if
Absolutely.
you think that you're not like a creatively minded person, there is a hobby that you like somewhere in you, and you just have to invest in it. It's so worth it. Um, and for me, that was writing. I've been writing for basically my whole life, and I wasn't writing because of said aforementioned very demanding major. And so then I was probably what it was somewhere in the middle of my sophomore year when I talked to Janice and I was like, why am I not a creative writing minor? That's a really weird thing that I haven't just done yet because I really like this a whole lot and I don't know why I'm not doing it. And I wanted to do it because I needed an excuse to write because I wasn't writing. And I was like, well, if it's in my schedule, that means that the time exists somewhere, so I have to do it. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I think that it was so largely in part of just the fact that it didn't feel like work to me. It didn't feel like something that was like taking up my time or my energy because I just loved doing it. Usually doing it so much. I had such fun professors. I had such fun classes, and like it didn't feel like a lot to balance because it was just two things that I really liked doing. I was like, okay, this is just I like doing my little science and my math, and I really like doing my little English classes, and so I'm just gonna do them both. Okay, and that was it. And if nothing else, I was like, I'm not gonna let my grades suffer for this reason. There's a perfectionist coming out. Um, so I like it felt like such a natural thing for me to do, and it didn't feel like it didn't feel overwhelming for me just because I wanted to make time for it, so I did. Um, yeah, I loved it. So much fun. Have a creative outlet. It's so worth it. You will feel like a person again if you have stopped feeling like a person.
Yeah, absolutely. This goes back to the thing we were talking about before with like your mental health is just so important and recognizing what's important to you and like what makes you happy is just so important. Nice little time back. Love that. All
Yeah.
right. The last question I have for you today is that I've gotten some advice myself that the best way to succeed in physics is to be stubborn. Be stubborn about getting research, be stubborn about learning, about failing. Do you feel as if this advice resonates with your experience? And if not, how would you modify that advice?
I also love this question. I'm very passionate about this question. So I I want to modify it a little bit. Because I agree in the sense that I'm a very stubborn individual. I feel like everybody in physics is stubborn. We're in physics. This is one of, arguably, I would say, one of the hardest majors that probably exists. Like, we're doing something really tough, right? And so you have to have like that stubbornness to keep pushing through the hard things. So that's where I would say yes. And then where I modify it is instead of the word stubborn, I think I want to use the word consistent. And I want to use that word very intentionally because I spent 4 years being stubborn and I burnt myself out so badly by the end. Because for me, in my experience, stubborn means, never don't take no for an answer and just keep pushing, pushing, pushing and just keep constantly just like keep going. Um, and sometimes it's okay to take no for an answer. Sometimes it's okay actually to just say, all right, thank you so much, and then just like being done with something. And so I think it's with consistency, it prepares you better for the long haul, and building up stamina for the long race that is college instead of the sprint, because college really shouldn't be a sprint. It should be a long. It doesn't feel long, but it is a long 4 years. Um, and I think if I let myself be like consistent in what that means for me, it meant that I could take everything as it came at me, instead of trying to brute force my way through all of it. When failure happens, I would learn how to take it in stride better instead of letting it, crush me and make me fall apart and die. Um, Failure is great, by the way. We love failure. Um, and I think being consistent, just being present, being in the moment, when it comes to the work, uh, would have honestly been better for me in the long run. Because by the end, I had nothing left in me because I had pushed and I was stubborn for so long. And then, oh, what was zoomed out? Um, I, I just had like nothing left in my system, and it really came back like to bite me really bad. Because I had small story time. I had this basically a research paper in quotes a research paper, that I needed to have done that I just did not. That I had nothing left. There was zero. I was empty. Um, and when I took myself out of the mindset of just trying to be, because if I kept going at it, like you have to get this paper done, you have to do it, like it wasn't doing anything for me. And when I took myself out of that space, when I let myself say, okay, do something, just do something today, and then do something tomorrow, and then eventually it'll get done. Um, Even if it doesn't have to happen right now, um, was so much better. And I did end up getting it done. I did end up getting that thing turned in, and it is something I can say I am at least mostly proud of because as somebody that was running on empty, it was like, wow, I did still produce something. And that wasn't because I was necessarily stubborn about it. It was actually because I was being very kind to myself about it. And obviously, as women and as a person of color, right, we are used to that stubbornness. And that is where I would say, absolutely. be stubborn. Don't let people tell you no, you can't do something because you're a woman, or don't tell somebody that you can't do something because you're a person of color. That's ridiculous. 100% be stubborn in those places, but maybe personally, just like you can like be a little chill when it comes to just like being a person as like a whole. um, at least for me, I found that it is so much better to just be present and be there more than it is anything else. Because, like, I would argue, right, like my legacy at Purdue, I'm not going to be remembered for the research I did or anything else like that. I'm going to be remembered as somebody that, hopefully, fingers crossed, encouraged people and was somebody that people could go to like talk to and to be present with. And I would say that that's just as important. Like the work is great. The work is important. We're all doing it. We have to do something with our lives, right? That is how this society works. But I think with consistency, with allowing yourself to just be in the spaces that you're in, I think provides more um something more long lasting, if that made any sense at all.
Yeah, no, that made perfect sense. I really like changing the word stubborn to consistency, and your definition of consistency was it was very good. It was very, very good. Yeah, that was also a perfect conclusion to our interview.
Yay.
I really, yeah, summed it all up very nicely what we talked about today too. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I know that other people in the department are going to appreciate this too. This is a resource that we can reflect back on when we're, in a slump or something and we need a piece of advice. We have your legacy with us.
Love you
So
guys.
I appreciate this.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
I don't have any other questions for you today, so I wish you luck in everything that you're doing. And
Thank you.
congratulations again on starting your master's. And I hope to hear from
Thanks.
you soon.
Yeah, of course. I love you guys. You're all the best.
Bye.
Bye.